It was funny because I was thinking about it. Last week or the week before? You got 14 years. And I was like, wow. I remember I wasn't far ahead of that date with my sobriety, and I remember Jay walking into Open Door Church, Celebrate Recovery for the first time. And I can remember the day. I remember him just, yeah, I know what I'm here for. Recovery, I need it. You know. And he just kind of plugged himself right in, and I remember him just making steps of faith in different areas. I remember at one point he was working at Kentucky Fried Chicken. He said, God told me to quit, so I quit, and we'll see what he's going to do. And it was getting a little sweaty along the way, and God just worked things through in different ways. And I just remember he became the ministry leader at Open Door, probably 2010, 11, 12-ish, somewhere in there. I don't even know, but all the years smashed together. And man, this guy has grown in the Lord through the program. And that's what my favorite part about Jay's testimony is. He has a lot of Celebrate Recovery experience to share. And there's a lot of ways you can find Jesus, but this is what we do here, so I like when it's in the testimony, you know. And so I'm just going to invite Jay up and tell you how it really goes.
Hi, my name's Jay. I'm a grateful believer. I have struggled with just about everything. And T-Lynn, don't mind if he gets a little rammy. We used to teach, my wife Crystal and I, we used to teach a youth group at Open Door Church. And my son, yes, thank you. My son would be with us and at all times. And so I taught many a lesson with Finn on my arms or running around the back, so don't feel bad. Don't feel bad at all. So I grew up in a very angry household. My parents fought a lot, which then I got in lots of fights and was quite an angry teenager, and got in a lot of trouble for that. Spent some time on probation, spent some time in some foster homes. Just was not well. And the summer I turned 15, my mom wanted to go visit my grandparents in Montana, and I did not want to go because I knew they were the crazy religious people that I wanted nothing to do with. I mean, they went to church twice a week. I mean, can you imagine that, twice a week? But so I was made to go, and I was only supposed to stay a week and then turn around and take a bus back home. And I ended up staying out there for 4 years. My grandparents convinced me that I needed to go to this Bible camp, and I wanted nothing to do with that Bible camp. But there was a girl that was going, and she was kind of attractive, and 15-year-old boys and girls. So I went. About the second day of camp, I quickly forgot about that girl. There was an altar call that first night, and I sprinted forward because I knew at that moment that I needed Jesus. I needed something different in my life, and I needed to change where I was going, because if the trajectory where I was at that point in time, I would have been in jail before I was 18. And over that course of that week, I felt like God called me into the ministry. God just spoke into me, and I came back, and I was just pumped. I was on fire, and I got home. My grandma bought me a Bible. Took me to this Christian bookstore, and I got a Bible, and handed me that Bible, and bought me my first Christian cassette. And it was pretty cool, but nobody ever taught me how to use that Bible. And I lived with another relative, and they told me that Christian metal music wasn't really Christian music. And so I started to learn the rules of following Jesus. I had to read this book that I had no idea how to read. I started at Genesis and went, okay, that's a cool story. You know, Exodus, Leviticus. What the heck is Leviticus? You know, I start reading through that, and I'm like, this doesn't even apply to my life. Why do I even care? And, you know, I learned how to tithe. I was good at giving 10% of my money to that church, you know, but I had God in my heart, but I didn't learn how to really trust him. I didn't learn to have real faith in anything that I couldn't do myself. I knew the rules. And so I kind of went through high school that way. I'd have times where I'd push into God and get close. I'd go to a retreat, go to a camp, go to a youth convention or something, And I get really close to God, and then I go back to trying to follow the rules instead of just trusting in faith that he had my back and that was good enough. And so I always tried to prove to God that I was good enough to earn his love. About the time I graduated high school, I had started hanging out with some people and started using drugs and drinking a lot, partying and living that kind of lifestyle. And, we kind of all know where that goes. And so I made a choice to move from Montana back to Minnesota, kind of got myself cleaned up again, quit using, quit drinking, quit smoking, got back to church, and got back to following those rules. And I was really good at following the rules for a minute. I had actually worked myself into a spot where I was a youth director at a church. Felt pretty good at myself. I've accomplished this thing that I felt like God had called me to. I was engaged, and life was pretty okay. That was until my fiancée at the time got pregnant. And a pregnant youth pastor is not something, or a pregnant girlfriend of a youth pastor is not something that was okay in that church, which shouldn't be anyways. But I felt like my sin had been exposed to the whole world, and that everybody else turned their back on me. And I felt like since that church turned their back on me, that God must have turned his back on me, and I wanted nothing to do with those people. I wanted nothing to do with that anymore. I was going to live my life my own way. I didn't have to follow any rules. The only rules I had to follow was to do what made me feel good. And that led into going back into drugs and smoking and drinking and partying and lots of dead-end relationships, several engagements that didn't end in marriage, and one marriage that failed horribly. Very selfish person, very angry person. And I got to a point where my then wife left me, and at the time I couldn't figure out why, but I was a jerk, and we were both very broken people, and we were just kind of living together in the same house, no real love anymore. So she left, and I hit that spot where I knew I couldn't do it on my own anymore. I didn't want to live anymore. I knew I couldn't live like I was. I'd alienated myself from most of my friends and my family. I was very lonely, very just disconnected from everything. And in this mess and in this depression and this darkness, a friend of mine goes, "You need to get into church immediately." And I kind of laughed at her. And she says, no, you need to get into church. And she was a pastor for an Assembly of God church. So I thought, okay, she's going to point me to the Assembly of God church in Hibbing, right? Because that's kind of her job, isn't it? I don't know. But she says, no, go check out this church called Open Door Church. And I was like, I don't know. And so I dragged my foot for a week or so. But I said, well, what do I have to lose at this point? I guess I can get back on that train of following those rules, right? Because then there's something there. And so I walked into Open Door Church the first morning, and I felt the presence of God like I hadn't felt in a long, long time. And I knew that God wanted me there, and I knew that that was the place I needed to connect. So that night, they happened to have an evening service, and every church I ever went to had evening services. I thought that was what you did. Isn't that what churches do? Well, apparently not, because that was the only time in the entire time I went there that they had a Sunday evening service. So I go to the Sunday evening service. It was some kind of bluegrass band, which, if you know me, that's not at all where I live musically. But I went anyways because that's what you do. You go to Sunday evening service. And I kind of tracked down the guy that I figured out who's the pastor. It was a different guy than the guy that spoke the Sunday morning, but it was this other guy. And so I was talking to him a little bit, and I said, I just need to talk with you for a minute. And I chatted with him for a few minutes, told him kind of where I was at. And he's like, come with me. I'm going to introduce you to these two fellas. And those from Open Door would know Jim and Pete. And those of you who didn't know those two fellas would know that it's kind of amazing I came back after meeting those two for the first time. Great guys, but just definitely characters, you know. And so they tell me, after chatting with them for a few minutes, they said, come to this thing called Celebrate Recovery. And I was like, okay, whatever, guys. And I go home and I jump on the website and it says, do you struggle with this, that, and the other thing? And I'm like, no, I'm not one of those people, right? I'm not one of them. I can fix this up. I can get back on the rule train and I'm good. And then I started reading a little closer about, you know, and it says, are you angry? Check. Are you depressed? Check. Do you struggle with chemical dependency? Check. Do you smoke? Check. Do you have relationship issues? Oh yeah, I got one of them. Check. And so by the end of the list, I'm like, I'm one of them people. I guess I need to go to this thing. And I went that first night, and I didn't want to go. I did not have any intention to go. I had intentions of going once and checking it out and probably never going back again. And I went that first night, and it definitely changed everything. It definitely changed my life for the better. Quickly, I got connected, like Dan was saying. I don't even know how I went from being just the guy that wandered in to helping everywhere. I was helping in the kitchen. I was helping greet people. I was helping, just helping wherever I could. It was just because I was so excited about the program, and so God had started doing so much stuff in my life that I wanted to see other people find that same freedom that I was finding. And it was in this time that I found a passage in Ephesians chapter 2. And again, those who spend any time with me will know that we go back to this frequently. Verse 8, it says, "For by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not from yourselves. It is a gift of God, not by works, so that you can boast." Whoa, it's not by works? I can't earn this? I can't be good enough for that? And in verse 10 it says, "We are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do." I found out that God created me to do good things. God created me to do those things, but not out of obligation, because out of the fact that I loved him and that they don't earn me anything besides just seeing those around me find Jesus. And so in learning those things and taking that into heart and learning that verse and keeping on holding on to that promise that I don't have to be good enough. I don't have to earn God's love. It's not about what I can put in the offering plate and what I can do. It's all about what he's already done for me. He paid that price on that cross, and when he died on that cross, he did the work, so I don't have to do it. And learning that and learning how to apply that to my life was just life-changing. So in this time then, so I've come into this Celebrate Recovery, and some friends were working on starting a new group in Virginia, and they said, "Why don't you lead us?" And I was like, no. And so anyhow, I got to be the first ministry leader of that Celebrate Recovery. And an amazing time, just being able to put that together from scratch and to see different churches and different groups come together and different people. And in that time, the ministry leader, shortly after that, the ministry leader of Hibbing had to step down. And they said, "Well, you're already running one. What's the difference between running two? Leading two?" And I'm like, okay, here we go. And so it was challenging, but it was fantastic. I mean, that was a time that was just a time where I grew a lot. God stretched me in that. Learned a little bit about conflict resolution and working with people, and which is something I wasn't real good at, and maybe not still real well at. But so after a time, I felt like God was calling me back to youth ministry, and I was like, I don't know, that's kind of weird. I think that ship sailed. But I felt in that time that I needed to go get some extra training. So I went to a ministry training school in Strawberry Lake, just north of Detroit Lakes. And I went to this camp out in the middle of nowhere for 10 weeks. And in that 10 weeks, God even worked more in my life and opened my eyes to more things and showed me more things than I could ever imagine, and had opportunities to work with other ministers, and had opportunities to minister to people, and just learn and sit under 10 weeks of training from some great teachers. And in that time, I had graduated, and I was kind of sitting there at graduation, and I was like, well, now what? I go back to Hibbing, I guess, and go back to doing what I was doing, or, I don't know. And so I met this girl there, this lady. She was there to visit a friend, and she was only supposed to be there for a week. And she was there to see a friend that was in my graduating class graduate. And we got to talking, and we were chatting a little bit. And she was supposed to leave Strawberry Lake after the first week, after the graduation, and go meet some dude out in Oregon. Never did make it to Oregon. She ended up changing her plans and staying in Strawberry Lake. And that would be my wife, Crystal. So we dated. She went back to Pennsylvania. I was living in Minnesota. We dated long distance for a period of time, and it was challenging. We made some trips back and forth, and about 9 months after we met, I just said, you know what, we can't do this anymore. We can't keep traveling this back and forth. This just doesn't work. So let's just get married. And it freaked a lot of people out, including myself. I'm like, I'm not sure that this is, I've blown this once before, but felt like it was really God's plan. So at this point in time, I had no job. I didn't really have a place to live. And we get married. We thought we had friends that we were supposed to be staying with in Detroit Lakes, and I thought I might have a job down there. The job that I thought I had disappeared. The friends that we were supposed to stay with said, we're moving to Tennessee. And we're like, oh, great. Now we're getting married, and we got no place to live. Neither one of us have jobs. Here we go. So we got married, and we went to Strawberry Lake, and I was working there for the summer and doing some ministry there. And we get a phone call. Well, we had gone to a bookstore, and we'd bought some books, and we get back, and I'm like, I have no idea why I have this youth ministry book in my hand right now, but I just felt like I needed to grab it off the shelf. And that night, I had a missed call from Roland Weaver at Open Door Church, and I was like, why would he call me right now? I'm not going back to Hibbing. We're staying down here. And I looked at my wife, and I said, wouldn't it be funny if he asked us to come lead the youth group? So I call him back the next day, and he's like, well, I was praying about it, and I think you and Crystal should come back and lead our youth group. What? Really? Really? And so that's what we did. We lived with a friend until we found real jobs. I guess I never really did find a real job. I started a business and made things do. Crystal got a job at Artie's. We eventually found a house. And we started this little youth group. And youth ministry is the most challenging thing a person can do, but also the most rewarding. I know many times I would come home at night and be like, why? Why don't they get it? I love these kids, but I hate them at the same time. But in that, I learned a lot. And I hope that the kids did too. And so we just did that for 8 years. And we had some awesome people that came alongside of us and helped us and did the same thing with us. But then it came time to transition out of that. And I hit a time where I didn't know what to do next. We decided it was time to move on to a different church, and I'd been at Open Door Church for a long time, and it was really hard to leave. But we just felt like it was time to move on to something else. And I went to a period of time, probably 4 or 5 months, I didn't go to church at all. I just was done. I was burnt out. I was tired. And I just needed a break. And in that time, a lot of doubt started creeping in, a lot of fear started creeping in. And so we started going to another church, and 2020 happened. So we're going to this new church, and I'm just not getting connected to anybody, because when you're watching church on your phone or on your computer, you just don't get connected to anybody. And I had disconnected myself from most of the people I knew before and just kind of set adrift. So about a year ago now, I started having, it'll be about 18 months ago, I started having some health issues, some stomach issues. I have what's called frozen shoulder, so I can't lift my arm any higher than this. And so I started trying to find these, answers to these health issues, and I'm sick all the time. And I just am getting to that spot where I'm just like, I just can't do this. I'm tired of being sick. I spent the month of July last year on the couch because I couldn't, anytime I leave the house, I would get sick. Anytime I did anything, I would be sick. I couldn't lift my arm up. I couldn't do nothing. And so in that, I just started seeking God again. I just had to, I had to put forth an effort to seriously seek God, because I was kind of at that end of that rope again. And I'm a person that learns the hard way. I have to keep going down those, keep falling in order to get back up again. And so I would like to stand here and say, yep, got it figured out and everything's perfect. But it's not. And I'm still struggling with that, some of that stuff that had started in that time when I completely disconnected. And that's part of the reason why I showed up here 3 weeks ago, because I knew I needed something again. I needed people around me that cared. I needed people to connect to. And so that's why I'm here. It's because I need you guys. And so what's the next chapter? I'm not sure. I've been sitting there going, God, I don't know what to do next, because my identity was tied up being a youth leader for so long, and not having that kind of is like, what's next? And so what's next? I have no idea. And that's my story. Somebody taking this microphone from me?